Hi everyone, welcome back to channel Armoured Pants here, and I have a new video for you on the Russian line, the Russian Premium Tier 8 Object 252U. Now, I recommended this tank recently as something to buy on Black Friday, but I realised I didn't have a video on it, so probably should do that. Before we get into that, just a quick reminder again that we recently started a Discord channel for this YouTube channel. I'm on there almost every day, so come along, chat to me, chat to other YouTubers, chat to other gamers, ask any questions you like, get any answers that you may like. You'll be very welcome, so come and join us, and there'll be a link in the description. Now, we're going to have a look at the tech spec for this tank. We will use blitzhanger.com as always to do that. Look at all its key characteristics, statistics, and its armor profile. But before we get into that, just a couple of words about it. I mean, this is an excellent premium. It was my top pick for Black Friday. So if you don't have it, I would definitely recommend it. It is a good premium too. It has 170% credit coefficient, so it's going to earn you credits as well, which is what we all want from premiums. That's why we buy them, right? To get additional credits so that we can move through the game with a little bit more proficiency. Now, in the Black Friday sale, it currently costs 5,000 gold, which is really good value because the gold is on sale as well. So it's about 15 euros, right? So 16 euros, which is really good price for what is essentially maybe the best heavy tank in tier 8, and certainly what I think is an OP tank. So it's definitely great value because you also get some other stuff in there. Plus you get all the equipment unlocked, and you know it's a pet hate of mine if you get a premium tank without the equipment unlocked. Premium tank should be premium. You should get everything with them, and you do get that with this, so hats off to Wargaming for that. And as I said, I believe this tank is OP, and we're going to discuss the reasons for that in a few minutes when we look at the tech spec. However, if you don't agree with me, all you have to do is just look at any tournaments and you'll see how many of them are in it. Now, in terms of provisions, I would use milk, improved fuel, and extra field rations to max out the performance, like view range and rate of fire. It has a 122mm gun, and it's going to be 13 seconds if you use gun rammer, but it goes up to 14 if you use calibrated shells. So we need to think about that carefully. AP rounds 225mm of pen, APCR 265, and 68mm of pen with HE, but that goes up to 75 with calibrated shells, which is one of the other things we need to consider when if we're going to use calibrated shells. 420 damage points, 360 damage points, and 500 damage points respectively with your AP, APCR, and HE. Muzzle velocity is 1300 meters per second with AP, goes up to 1625 with APCR, but it's only 910 with HE. So if you switch from APCR to HE rounds, you're going to have almost a 50% decrease in muzzle velocity, so be aware of that. It's easy to miss. Gun index is 9.3, which is superb, especially for a Russian heavy tank at tier 8. Obviously not as good as the tier 8 American premiums we looked at, but with a Russian tank, we know notoriously their gun handling is not as good as other types, but this is pretty decent, I have to say. The mobility index is 2.7, has good power to weight ratio, so this tank is very good for heavy. It does 35 kilometers per hour, so it's not the fastest, but it gets there quickly because of that power to weight ratio. So it is pretty mobile, far more mobile than tanks with a similar armor profile. Concealment numbers also pretty good. So an RU-251, which is one of the best view ranges at 304 meters in its tier, will spot you up within 259 meters if you're still, 290 when you fire, and 286 if you're moving. And that's not bad, right? And your view range is 271, so you can actually spot up tanks and still remain concealed if you're still. And this is far better than, let's say, the American premium tanks we looked at in the last couple of reviews, right? But this is what this tank is all about. It's armor. Its armor is Trollish. If you're top tier in this tank, you can be just such a bully. That's probably not a good expression right now, given what's happened in the UK with ministers bullying and forcing people to leave their jobs. But I guess we are not talking about that type of bullying. We're talking about bullying in a pixelated tank context, so not real bullying. But this tank is just a top tier monster. But even if you're up tiered, this tank holds its own. When we look at the armor profile front on, you can see it's almost impossible to pen this tank, even if it's up against tier 9. 6 degrees of gun depression too, which is pretty good for a Russian tank, and 20 degrees in elevation, so it's decent gun alignment too. But its armor is the main thing. It's side scrape, reverse side scrape. But here's the other thing about this tank, right? We spoke before about passive and active bounces, right? And as we look at the front on armor profile of this tank, you can see there really is only that lower plate which is vulnerable at the front. But the sides, look, it's also difficult to paint the sides. So an active bounce is where you angle the tank up. You consciously angle the tank up, you side scrape or whatever to get a bounce, right? But passive bounces are when you are not purposely angling up, right? But a tank fires at you and gets a bounce anyway, right? This tank is a master at this. And those passive bounces are things which you don't actually have to work for, right? You just get them, they're bonuses within the game, let's say, right? And this tank delivers these all day long. If you don't have it, but if you've played against this tank, you've probably fired at it at the back or at the sides and thought, okay, this is 100% pen, and it doesn't go through. Or it pens and doesn't do any damage, or it just ricochets. That's a passive bounce, and this tank delivers these all day long. Another OP tank, for the same reason, in my opinion, is the T22 Medium at tier 10. Also gets these passive bounces that you're not even playing for. And if you're a good player, and then you get these bonuses added on top, then, you know, that's what makes this tank, I believe, OP. You know, the armor profile is just awesome, right? It has a good gun, it does good damage, and it's mobile. So you add all of those things together and you get a fucking monster of a tank, right? And I just, you know, that's why I believe this tank is OP and probably the best tier 8 premium. And as I said, guys, if any of you have been in tournaments recently, right, or been looking at tournaments, you will see many teams have 5 of these and the rest were probably ML1s if it's tier 8. Because right now they're the tanks which are really kind of delivering in tier 8. But I've seen teams with 7 of these. Okay, you lose a bit of view range, but you know, as I said, the view range is 271. It's not too bad. But also its concealment numbers are good as well. Of course, if you've got 5 of these in one team and 5 of these in another team, it kind of cancels it out. But you know, if you've got 5 of these in one team and the other team doesn't have 5 of these, the chances are, especially if the players are more or less of the same quality, that the team with these is going to win. And if that's the case, then of course, you know, you have to consider that this tank is somewhat OP. Now, you saw the opening sequence of this game, right? What I decided to do was, you know, I decided to go to C, right, which is normally the fast-moving channel, right, where the lights and mediums go. But because this tank has that part-to-weight ratio, I can get there, and you can see I can get there and I can gauge the enemy. I've cleared off one tank myself, helped my enemy clear off another one, and now we're going to clear off the third one. I've also gotten some bounces, as you can see, adapting this position here, when really only my turret was sticking out means that, you know, I'm going to get bounces all day long. I knew I was going to take one here, but because I've conserved my hit points, it doesn't really matter. Plus it's a T54, so, you know, he's going to roll me for 300, whatever. You know, you've also got a big pool of hit points in this tank, so well worth taking one just to clear him off. Clear that flank, and now we're moving in. And this game is already over, by the way, so you can see just in the opening sequence, the 100 first seconds of that game, you know, this tank enabled the Greens, my team, to really just push that flank and clear off the enemy. And that's something you can do in this tank. You know, it plays something like an IS-8 and not like a Heavium, but it's not a Heavium in that, like as the US tanks are, in that it also lacks the armor. It doesn't. It also has that Trollish armor. And you're going to see another bounce coming up here off the Tiger. Go for his drive wheel here. Don't get any additional module damage, which is surprising because normally the drive wheel is one of the most vulnerable parts of the tank. But you see here, front on, I switch up to APCR, pin the Tiger, and I get a bounce off him. That's my last contribution to the game. But you see, you know, this game was very, very easily won, right? And, you know, if there's, by the way, an Object 252U on one team and not on another, it really is a huge advantage, particularly if it's in the hands of somebody who knows what they're doing, right? So there's nothing amazing or spectacular in that game, you know, but, you know, delivered almost 2.7k damage, third class mastery badge, but really a very, very easy game, right? I mean, if you look at that game, you'd say that was actually pretty easy, right? And you can have games like that all the time in this tank. Now we're going to have a look at another game in a second where I'm actually up tiered, but again you'll see it holds its own. Get a bounce off a waffle tractor in it, you know, and you know, put in a HE round into the waffle tractor as well, do a lot of damage. So, and again, this tank can be played, you know, as a heavium because of that power to weight ratio, as I did in that game. But in the next game we're going to have a look at, which is on Winter Malikova, we're going to play it in traditional heavy tank role, tip of the spear, and go to siege that strategic point on Winter Malikova, which is at the windmill, right? So every map has these strategic points, and as we discussed in the how to play heavy tanks, that's the role of heavy tanks, is to anchor the team by seizing strategic points on a map. And on this map, we know that at this area around C, on the heavy tank channel near the windmill, is a strategic point to seize, right? So off we go. You know, we're going to get there pretty quickly using that power to weight ratio, and then once we're there, even though we're up tiered, we're able to hold that position and put in some damage and bounce some shots. So basically doing classic heavy tank role. So, you know, the opposite of what we did in the previous game, where we went as a kind of heavium supporting the mediums down the fast moving channel. Now we're going to heavy tank channel. You can see power to weight ratio gets you there pretty quickly. You're able to push on before anybody else arrives. Don't get any shots in from coming in from the opposite side of the map. And now we're into this position. By the way, on this map, by the way, guys, this area here is important to seize. It opens up fields of fire both into the enemy tanks at the opposite side of the map, where the map converges, but also down into B as well. But don't push on too far. If you go up to the windmill, you have the opposite effect, in that you open up too many fields of fire onto you. Here, if you're in a tank like this, is sort of, in my opinion, the optimum position. It's a position I always like to go to on this map. If you push on further and go to the windmill, you're, as I said, opening up too many fields of fire onto you. Just wanted to show you this. You know, this gun system is good for a Russian tank. You saw there, Object 704, one of the most difficult tanks to pen front on it. Particularly if you're in a lower tier tank. You saw there, even with AP, I didn't need to switch up to APCR, no problem whatsoever. If you're wondering, by the way, why I'm still have AP loaded up even though I know there's a waffle tractor in front of me, it's because I want to keep my shot options open. So yes, the waffle tractor is there, but there are also other tanks there, and I don't want to have to switch between shell types, because they could lose me split seconds. But in a position like this, when there's so many tanks in front of you, losing that split second could be the difference between getting penned and not getting penned. So that's why I left it an AP. I know the AP round is not going to give me a max roll on the waffle tractor, but it's still going to give me a big roll, but it also gives me options open. But now when I know that my shot is going to be on the waffle tractor, I switch up to HE and boom, clear them off. Plus, here's on one of these passive bounces I told you about, right? I pull out, I know I'm going to take a shot. I've conserved all of my hit points, so I don't really care if I get penned. I want to clear off that waffle tractor. But you saw there, even when I'm not playing for it, passive bounce delivers every time, right? Most tanks, when you're side out like that, right, you're going to get penned, right? This tank, you know, you've got a very, very good chance of bouncing, and it gives you that sense of confidence as well, that you can push forward in it, because, you know, this tank is reliable. It's very forgiving. So even if you're not the most experienced heavy tank player and you're looking for a tank to play in tier 8 to try out, this was for you, because you're going to get more passive bounces, things you don't have to play for, and that's going to help you when you're practicing those key skills, particularly if you're stepping up to tier 8 for the first time. You're going to be playing against bigger guns and better players. You see here, this time almost 3k damage, again, third class mastery patch, again, without having to do too much, guys, right? I mean, really nothing too spectacular in that game. In fact, you could say, again, like the previous one, actually a bit boring. But many times, boring is good, right? For example, my parents had a driving school for many, many years, and my father always said the sign of a good driver is he takes you from A to B without you really knowing that you've been driving, right? Uneventful, boring, but that's steady, reliable, and good. And in this tank, a heavy tank, that's kind of what you want. Okay, we play things like light tanks and that for the fun value, but tanks like this, we, you know, the less remarkable their gameplay, the more steady they are, right? Probably, you know, in that game, even my teammates probably didn't even notice what I was doing, but my contribution was almost 3k, even when up tiered, and you're able to, I think I finished top with damage there as well. So, you know, again, a good example of playing this tank and playing this tank in the heavy tank role, right? So 2 examples there, one going on the medium channel, one going on the heavy tank channel, showing the versatility and the diverse nature of this tank's play. You know, now that sounds slightly paradoxical when I just said that it's also a bit boring. I don't mean it's boring in that it's play style and that, I mean it's boring in that it's so reliable that at the end of the game you're kind of hardly aware that you have, you know, broken a sweat playing this game, right? Let's say this tank is the Roger Federer of Blitz, you know, wins things, hardly breaks a sweat, looks like it did at the end of the game as it did at the start. So let's have a quick recap on this. What is a really, really excellent and, in my opinion, OP premium tank. Perfect heavy for the role of heavy tank. You can be tip of the spear in this tank, no problem. You know, it's reliable. That armor profile is just trollish, and that's kind of what makes it this OP tank, in my opinion. And obviously a lot of players agree with me because it is a tournament favorite right now. Also, I think Littlefinger recommended it for tournaments too, right? So a lot of people are sharing the same opinion. You get those active and those passive bounces that we discussed about, right? Because of that trollish armor. It's side scraper par excellence. I mean, if you get into a side scraping position in this tank, unless they 5 or 6 of them rush it, you can hold off an army in this fucking thing. Now, I would run gun rammer, calibrated shells, and refined gun. Because, sorry, I would run gun rammer, supercharge, and refined gun, not calibrated shells, because 14 seconds for me is just too long of reload. But if you think you're gonna be firing HE a lot, then run the calibrated shells, because you get that over 70 millimeters of pen with the HE. So you're kind of almost at Hesh numbers with it, which is, so just remember that, guys. But this 14 seconds for me is just a bit too long. It does 35 kilometers per hour and has good part-away ratio, so it's also mobile as well, it gets around the map. You know, and if you push on to medium and light tanks in this, it's kind of just a rolling wall of death. So overall, a great tank, my top pick for Black Friday. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it useful. So cheers, Mush. Thanks for watching. And now I guess all remains for me to say, as always, is pants off.
That's all, folks.